Peptides are powerful and often misunderstood.
And we're here to change that one conversation at a time.
I'm Dr. Kylie Burton.
And I'm Jessica Bricky.
This is Pep Talk, Peptides Unpacked, science made simple, results made real. Now, I'm at an expo a couple months ago now, maybe 2, 3 months ago, and I have three 4x6 cards. One is for thyroid and peptides, one is for inflammation and peptides, and the other one is for autoimmune and peptides. And I texted Stella and Jess and I said, I need a menopause and peptides card. So that's our topic today, menopause and peptides. And Stella is an expert. So we've invited her on. She's also a pharmacist. So she's got a lot of background. She's also one of the team leaders in our team. When you join on as an affiliate under us, you get Stella and her pharmacy background, which we have used on very many occasions. So, Stella, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here today.
Walk us through the first time you were introduced to peptides.
Well, I actually had a pretty negative bias towards peptides to begin with.
Oh, even better.
Same.
Yeah. Well, I own a natural hormone balancing weight loss company in Ormond Beach, Florida. And I've had that since 2017. So when peptides came on the market and became quite well known and being used throughout, I had 3 to 5 women a week coming into our centers saying, I feel terrible. This took away all the joy in my life. I'm just so sick. I just can't stand it. Or the ones that were just terrified, didn't want to try. So I was seeing a lot of negative side effects. And of course, my program is an all natural based program. And so I just kind of had a real bias against it. And then I noticed as time went on, we had less and less people coming in such a crisis. We still have women coming in that were having trouble, but less and less in crisis. And that really kind of made me take a look back and go, okay, what's going on? And it was just they came out with the tirzepatide, the second compound of what we know as the typical GLPs for weight loss. And it's interesting because on paper, they have the same side effect profile. But in practice, we actually see a lot less of the GI side effects with the GLP GIP than we do for most people with the just GLP alone. And I won't get into that a whole lot here unless we do want to dive into a little bit more. I always say it's really simple to think of the GLP is the one that slows the gut the most. When we added on a second unit, we didn't need as much of the GLP. It's much more nuanced than that, but that's a way that people can kind of help keep it straight.
Yeah. I'll just throw a little side note out because I've had a lot of conversations with chiros, with naturopaths, with health professionals, and they're like, what do I do? I've been so negative, so against
Right.
GLPs. And now I'm starting to listen and I'm starting to realize I might be wrong. How
Right.
do I make that transition? And it's not that we're for it, because all three of us are against peptides when they are done incorrectly.
That's very true.
And that's the reality, is that we're
Yes.
against the peptides when they are done inappropriately with bad sourcing and not with a pharmaceutical prescription and
Yes.
oversight.
Right.
So I feel like that's a good transition that you had. Or like, look, these things are ugly. They're causing big side effects. Oh, wait, they can be ugly.
Right.
They can cause big side effects. But when you do them correctly underneath the right supervision with the right sourcing, pretty cool things can happen.
Yes. And I felt like I really hadn't tied it together yet that, and I'm just making up these percentages. Let's say 90% of the people that were doing them were doing fantastic. Of course, I didn't see those people coming into my center looking for an
Yeah. Uh-huh.
alternative.
Right.
I only saw, let's say 5% it didn't work and didn't care and they were fine. The other 5% that was having such bad side effects, that's who was coming into me.
And
So
then that's a deeper question too, like why were you having the side effects?
exactly.
Right.
Yes,
So that's
exactly.
a really great point. I was like you, Stella. I was
Mhm.
like, no, I am so because they were just
Yeah.
being titrated so quickly, and people were
Yes.
literally starving themselves, and they
Hmm.
looked horrible and unhealthy, and they were losing their muscle and all these awful things. And the only reason I got involved with, which I've said time and time again, was because I was getting the education to
Hmm.
support those people. But in order
Yes.
to support them, I had to understand them. Well, once
Right.
I got the education from from a functional doctor, by the way,
Hmm.
who thinks the way I do, I was like, oh my gosh, these are brilliant.
Yes.
Still experimented with myself though. But then to your point, Kylie, I just want to say when chiropractors or other wellness people come to you that say, how do I kind of backtrack on what I've been saying? Own the space.
Right.
I didn't like them because this is what I was seeing in practice or what people were doing. I did the research, realized the problem was all about the sourcing. And now that I'm educated and can support people on how to do that properly, this is how we do that. So just own where you were.
Right.
If we are really good practitioners, or if anybody is worth a grain of salt when it comes to being in the wellness space, then they are open to the science and the education component. And that's always going to change. The more you know, the better you do. And it's always evolving. So to stay
Right.
stuck where you are and closed to anything that's coming, which I was,
Hmm. I was as well.
yeah, then we're doing a disservice not only to ourselves, but to those that we work with.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you another thing that really got me excited about it is I was already looking at different compounds for opening up the detox pathways and really hitting what's known as that longevity side of peptides as well.
Mhm.
And those just really excite me as well. I think there's great benefit in the GLP and low doses long term. But I even know for myself, adding on some different things that have just made substantial strides, that 8 years of natural balancing, 8 years of supplements, 8 years of eating well did not get me to where this peptide got me in like 2 weeks, you know? And when I look back at the trajectory of like when, some chronic illness set in me in early childhood and kind of going along, I'm like, oh, my mitochondria have just been depleted since about the age of 9, you know?
Yeah.
So it really was just kind of looking at that and going, okay, this is exciting to see something that quickly make a difference and work. But that longevity side, opening up the detox pathways, getting the mitochondrial energy, feeding the mitochondria along the way as well, and just so many options there to choose from. And just kind of going, it's like, pick that. Oh, okay, what do I want? I always say, even when it comes with clients and supplements who don't want to take a lot of supplements, I'm like, okay, let's talk about your top 3 concerns. And let me tell you the top 3 I'm going to recommend. And we can do the same thing with peptides, is
Right.
that we can say, this is what we need to go on here with, And even with peptides, I'm still a big fan of, you got to have a multivitamin with good quality source minerals. You have to have good things. You got to have some super digest, you've got to have different things that, natural digestive enzymes on board, some magnesium every evening. There are some core things that I think supplementation wise people do still need, but I've also been able to cut out a lot of supplements that I was taking, which has been a really wonderful thing to not have to take, and so I'm not just adding these on top of everything else that I've been doing. I'm able to pull some things back.
Yeah, those core supplements, multi-mineral at the top of
Well,
the list for sure. Maybe an
yeah.
omega, magnesium, adding on to that
Mm.
mineral because that might need to be supplemented as well. Like those don't go away when we're doing
Right.
these things
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
My
because no matter how
requirement is
good
an
you're
adrenal
eating, and
supplement.
yeah,
Yeah.
but no matter how good you're eating, how well you're
Right.
eating, our soils are depleted.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to have those base supplements, but we
Right.
can eliminate a lot of expense for people. And Kylie and I we just recorded a podcast where we talked about this with somebody, and we say it frequently. We can get people into a better space faster with these things
Mm-hmm.
for a lot less money, and eliminating some of the things and the
Right.
pill fatigue that can come along with a
Right.
big old thing of supplements that you're taking every day.
Right.
And you wonder, are these
Are
even
these
working?
right? Yeah. Well, and I had a conversation with someone this afternoon, and she's like, I've done all these different things before, and what is different here? And she was looking at our natural holistic program, and it's like, because you've done them all individually. You've never tied them into a core program. And so I think that's one of the things that people kind of need to realize is that when they were looking at just adding supplements on or trying to eat better, maybe they ate better for a day, but then kind of run off track again, and that's something where the microdosing can kind of help tame some of those cravings and food noise that they were having and just give them some more energy and clear that inflammation out of their body in a way that makes it more sustainable. So when you add supplements onto, I'm going to say an okay diet, because what I've learned in 8 years in weight loss is that people don't eat near as clean as they think they do. Everyone comes into me telling me how great their diet is. And then as we unpack it, it's like, okay, you're opening a package for that. You're opening a package for that. We really just want to clean you out for 28 days, no packages, real proteins, real vegetables, real fruits, and keeping it simpler, that people just don't eat as well as I think they do. But those foundations are really important to learn that for long-term success. Really, it's kind of hit that in. I always like to talk to people also. They're like, well, what about the rebound weight gain that comes when you're on GLPs? And I'm like, rebound weight gain comes from any weight loss where you didn't change your habits and you didn't do something long term. And you don't pay attention to the clues that your body's giving you as you're starting to put on some more weight. And, as women, we all hit that perimenopausal stage, usually at our mid 40s, some actually now in the mid 30s. They've been on birth control for so long, it's really hitting a lot younger. They've had hormone disruption for a while, but hitting that time where everything I used to do no longer works.
Right.
What can I add on that can make a difference? But maybe I don't have to have a complete overhaul and change in everything I'm doing. And then as we approach menopause even further on, I talk with women all the time who are doing functional medicine, who are doing the hormones, and they're getting everything optimized, and they still feel like crap. So it's like, where can we come in on those situations? And like you guys have talked a lot about the GLP and the lower dose, higher doses if needed. I've got
there are people that need them.
There are definitely people, depending on their metabolic state, they may need a higher dose to get the same response as someone else. So I'm not against that, but to do it just a little bit at a time as we need to, and watch for responses. Like I had a client, I had no idea she had chin hairs growing in, because she always took care of them every single day, and she was like, well, yeah, I'm really, really conscious about it, but she needed a higher dose and those quit growing. So it's learning that it's not just the food noise, it's not just the weight, the inflammation, the metabolic changes, the insulin signaling that's happening. There's just a wonderful cascade that's happening inside the body when we can layer these in on top of good foundations.
That's a really important point. So there are other clues that our body's giving us when we're talking about hormonal imbalance, like the facial hair. Like a lot of us women of this age now, Kylie hasn't hit this yet because she's a baby.
You guys say like mid-30s, and I'm like, I got crap.
With your red hair, electrolysis isn't going to work for you,
That's
probably.
right.
But acne is another thing that changes for women, and you hear women all the time like, I'm 40 years old, I'm 50 years old, why do I have acne? I'm not a teenager anymore. Well, your hormones are changing. Maybe your drainage isn't great. But the facial hair is something that a lot of women joke about as they get older. Incontinence is another big one that happens as we get older. And some of that has to do with whether we have or have not had children and what that process has looked like. But the other part of that is our hormone change when it comes to that. So we do have a lot of other clues with hormone imbalance that these things are going to step up and they're going to help. Mine was an incontinence issue that I'm not afraid to talk about. I had the prolapse stuff fixed, and then I got this other weird incontinence thing that happened. Gone by microdosing. Gone.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So you were probably experiencing a lot of an inflammatory response as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In the
Huge.
bladder. Yeah. I remember sitting in pharmacy school way, way many years ago, and we had just had a class and they were talking about hormone and they were talking about vaginal dryness. And I think it got talked about for about 5 whole minutes. And then we're in a class like a week later. Yeah. I mean, it was a whole 5 minutes of our conversation, and then we're in a class like a few days or a week later, and they're talking about, and it had to still be on women's health, because then they started talking about the increased incidence of urinary tract infections as women hit their mid-50s. And I immediately, as a pharmacy student, went, well, you just talked about the vaginal dryness a week ago. And so the pH in the vagina has changed. Like, you know, do we see a correlation here? No, no. I was just like, I'm like going, no, I'm the only one that sees a correlation. It's like, come on, you're the professor. You're supposed to know. All right, you left. This is an amazing school, you know? But it was really interesting just to hear that conversation go from, okay, we had the vaginal dryness 1 week, increased, and it was like the two weren't meshing. And it really is just, I think it's being more and more talked about. We have a lot more functional medicine, more concierge medicine now. People are getting a lot more talk about. But it's interesting. It's like what treatments can really help some people. I'm someone that a low dose estrogen at the age I'm now, well into my 50s, still throws me into an estrogen dominant state. I can do an over the counter dosing of estradiol and do well with that. But a lot of them are like, well, I just do a vaginal insert, every week or so, or twice a week, and I do fine with that. My body doesn't let me do that, and it tells me right away that I can't do that. As much again as the doctors will say, well, it stays in the vagina, it doesn't transfer anywhere. And I'm like, okay, whenever did that happen in the body? There's a capsule
Right. This
around
is why
something,
we, but we can put those hormones on our skin and it's going to absorb. But if we put
and
it
they're going to get where they
inside
need
our
to be. Yeah.
vagina, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot more because you can get your numbers optimized. You can see doctors that work in the hormones, and you can get your numbers optimized, but that doesn't necessarily mean your body is optimized. All right. So there's a big difference there. And when I started looking at some of the other longevity peptides, the one for me, and you guys have heard me talk about it a lot, and I'm a big fan of, is what's known as the MOTS-C. And that is a substrate that's in your mitochondria, and it declines as we age. But as I said, about the age of 9, I had a number of tick-borne infections, things going on, and then just different illnesses throughout my teens that probably now we're looking back, they were tick-borne co-infections and things like that. So I feel like that's been depleted in me for years, and why I had such an amazing response to it within the first week. And then by week 2, I could really tell a difference. Like it was lasting longer because you dose it 3 times a week. It was lasting past just the day I was dosing it. And so that was a really neat thing to experience with that one.
So
Really
I want to talk about that for one more second, Stella.
Yes.
I did not have that reaction when I started my MOTS-C. I actually was feeling really crappy for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And part of that is the mitochondria turnover that's happening in the
Yes.
body. And probably for me, I needed to back off on my dose. It was probably a little too heavy for me at that time because that was happening. So not everybody's going to necessarily have that quick response, but even if you don't,
Right.
it doesn't mean it's not
It
for
doesn't mean
you.
it's not coming.
In fact,
Exactly.
it might
Yeah.
mean that you really need
That you
it.
really need it
You just
more.
need to go
Exactly.
slower with it.
Right. Yeah.
But what is your reason behind it? So I think, yes, you like it, but tell us why you like the Motzi
For
specifically.
me, it really has been, it's been clarity, just a lot of mental clarity. I've really enjoyed that. The energy. And
Mhm.
I've had a lot more energy with that, but I still go to bed and go to sleep. It's not like energy that keeps me up throughout the evening. So it's just been kind of like, oh, this is how people feel. It's really just kind of been like that enlightening thing to me. It was like, oh, is this normal? Which I have to say, with my program, when I did that in 2017, from the state that I was in to where I came, I was just like, oh, this is amazing. So I think this just brought me another step into my wellness journey, which is a wonderful thing to have at age 57, is to go another step further in your wellness journey, you know?
With the MOTS-C, there's another level beyond the mitochondrial component too. And that's another reason why I mean, when we hit menopause, energy kind of tanks a little bit and we're readjusting to this new stage of
Yeah.
life. But when it comes to anything that we're talking about with hormones, the first thing that we think about is liver. And a lot of times women have a metabolic imbalance and maybe they're storing a little bit extra. We're going to just, for the sake of this, call it sugar in the liver, which
Yes.
is, it's a little bit more than that. It's a little more
Yeah.
nuanced. But MOTS-C will help us to target some of that and use that for energy a little bit more, which will help how the liver's processing hormones. But
Yes.
it also can help target some of that stored fat, the visceral fat, the dangerous fat in the body. So energy is number one, which so many people at the stage of life and in the perimenopause, postmenopause, whatever it is, really need, but it's going a step further when we're talking about hormones specifically.
Right. Yeah. And the hormone, like you said, the liver aspect of it, the stepping up the metabolism that happens with that. I dropped about 4 or 5 pounds when I went on it in the first 2 or 3 weeks. Really hadn't even noticed and just happened to get on the scale and was like, whoa, wait, wasn't trying, it was just, a nice little boost. But when you think about it, okay, it's increasing the metabolism,
Yep.
and I really didn't notice a lot of increased hunger, so that was nice. But so let's talk about hunger and let's talk about protein and one of my other favorite peptides for menopause.
Let's hear it.
So when we think, one of the things our body does as we age is it wastes protein so easily that it's almost like it's this weird quirk of nature. We're like, how on earth are we losing something so rapidly that is so vital for survival? And that is our protein and our muscle mass, regardless if you're on a GLP or not. It just, if you're not using it and building it constantly, it is degrading quickly.
Yes.
So getting enough protein throughout the day. All right. But then really looking at adding on, does someone need to add something that's going to help their growth hormone factor kind of give out some more little burst? And that's where Sermorelin can come in for a lot of women and be really helpful, because another thing that tends to happen in menopause is sleep issues. And the Sermorelin also does really help with sleep. It helps with muscle recovery. It helps with muscle building. And it can just be an amazing add-on for women just to kind of help with that muscle preservation long term. But remembering, you have to still be eating the protein.
At the end of the day, these are all tools. Like the
Exactly.
lifestyle thing still has to be here. You still have to nourish your body. These
Exactly.
you can't out inject still a crappy
Right.
lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't out supplement a crappy diet. You can't out exercise a crappy diet. You can't
Right.
out inject, we can't out inject lifestyles that aren't really beneficial to us. And so, do they give you some leeway? Yeah, they do. Do I feel like I can recover quick? I have terrible carb cravings. If I eat carbs, I know I'm going to have carb cravings the next day. I've already got a nice healthy breakfast plan for myself, so I don't give in and have carbs at some point. Like I planned this out really well. I always say I also have what I call a 2-bite rule. If I'm 2 bites into something that I know isn't healthy, if it's not the best I've ever had, I stop.
Not worth
Because I
it.
can, yeah, because I can stop at that point without, I used to say 3, but I found myself at 3, then just still wanting the whole thing. Like I was already past that carb threshold for myself, which apparently is very low, you know?
I love that. That's a
Yeah.
great way to look at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I just get into it. And I, one of my favorite things one day is one of my clients, she comes back and she's on a phase of the program where you're not supposed to be adding carbs and sweets in yet. And you were like, well, what's going on this last week? And she's like, I had the best red velvet cake I've ever had. She goes, and yes, I know it's not on this phase, but I don't care. I have 2 bites in and it was the best ever. But she was with her family on vacation and she was enjoying, they were at the Biltmore and it was one piece for the whole family of 4.
I
And
think
they
that's like
enjoyed
the
it, should never
simplest
eat.
rule I've ever heard of.
It's a very simple rule. Yeah. And
That's
it gives
smart.
you permission to have that. And because I want people to enjoy what they had and not have regret over it. I'll
Well,
tell you real
right.
quick. Yeah.
We're raised on this age, you and I, again, sorry, Kylie, we're older than you, where restriction was everything, right? Like we were made to feel guilty if we were in a place where we were enjoying, like creme brulee. Creme brulee
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
that's a big weakness for me. If I'm looking at that menu and I peek over and see
Mm-hmm.
creme brulees on the menu for dessert, you better believe it's
Mm-hmm.
coming to me. But if it's not a good creme brulee, I
Right.
am okay to push it away. I'll
Yeah.
have a couple of bites and say, not worth it. If it's a good creme brulee, I'm all in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even come near me. I'm not
Yeah.
sharing it. I'm taking all of it in and
Little souffles.
I'm not going to feel bad about it at all.
Right.
Because you know what? I still want to live and enjoy
Right.
life and not feel the way that I have felt for so many decades in my life, which is deprivation
Right.
and taking some of the joy out of the really fun things in life.
Right.
And that includes a treat every now and
Yes.
again. I'm not
That's
having
true.
creme brulee
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I've said for myself and for many of the clients that I've had for the last 8 years is that we've all been talked about moderation, moderation, moderation. And I think to moderation, think of indulgences.
Okay.
Moderation, if moderation has made you fat, sick, and tired, you're not a person that can go back to moderation.
Well, you're probably not even really moderating though.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's where it comes down to, I'm a big fan of still continuing to journal and things like that and go through back with a highlighter and highlight how many moderations you had.
Yeah.
And, that's where I say people aren't eating as clean as they think they are, Oh, it was just two little chocolates. Oh, but that became two in the morning, two in the afternoon, two at dinner. So it can add up very, very quickly.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so we've got Motzi, we've got Sermorelin,
Yeah, yeah. And so that
and
was the one for muscle, sleep, recovery, the growth hormone. It's going to help your body release more growth hormone.
okay, and I don't think we
Great
were
thing.
clear, but maybe I just misunderstood what you were saying. And to round it out, the trio for people that are in perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause,
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the microdosing of the GLP, GIP. And like I always say, I like the combo. I just like it so much better. So I like
so
that
much
one
better.
responsibly with a good, healthy diet. The
Hmm.
MOTS-C for extra mitochondrial metabolic support, and then that Sermorelin for adding on that layer of muscle building, muscle recovery. I know some people that don't work out because it hurts so bad. So muscle recovery, sleeping at night, and what that really can help with. The other one I'm a big fan of, and I've heard your podcast, so I know you guys talk about it a lot, but that's the BPC and
Hmm.
the TB500, the Wolverine stack. And I've recently had an experience with that I was on it for a while. I was off of it. And then I'm realizing, oh, my headaches and my neck tightness and all that is kind of coming back. And I'm having more frequent headaches. And what is going on? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm about 6 weeks now without that. So I got that ordered again. I will say though, I ordered it as the close stack. I decided to go ahead and add the
Ooh,
copper and the KPV into that. So I will let everyone know as time goes on how that's working for me. And I'm excited to be getting that in the next couple of days and
that's
start
very
that again.
exciting.
Yeah. But it is interesting, the same I say with supplementation and diet, pay attention to the clues that your body's giving you. My body was giving me more headaches and a lot more tightness and stiffness and just a lot going on. Now, I had a lot more work that I was doing, but I'd had that work previously also and was doing fine. So it took just a second going, oh, that's what it is. That's the main difference. But it kind of took just sitting down after a couple of days with a headache and within 1 week, and I was like, what's happening? You know, and me previous 2016 and before, I had a headache every single day. And so now when it happens, I'm like, how did I function? How was that
Wow.
possible? But
Yeah.
it was, yeah. So, so I got to nip this in the bud right away.
Yes, for sure.
Get
That
back on
cloak
that
can't
healing
get here
journey.
soon enough.
Exactly. Get that taken care of. Yeah. But we help a lot of women through perimenopausal and menopausal states and really just kind of keeping the body, we're never going to be our 20-year-old self again. That is just reality. And I personally don't want to be my 20-year-old self again. Much happier in the body I'm in now. But it is just paying attention, giving it what it needs, realizing that saying no to a late night or no to alcohol or no to something is being an ambassador of my own health. And it doesn't mean I'm being funny and that I just don't want to be around or do that. I've learned over time how to go out and have a good time and not have as much alcohol or not
Mhm.
indulge in the foods if I don't like them. So it is just kind of learning that wonderful little balance and dance that you can have to get through life and enjoy it. And as you said, not be so restrictive. We came up in that restrictive age.
Yeah, and that was how it was done. If you wanted to be healthy, lose weight, be healthy, by the
Right.
way.
Yeah.
Restrictive, and that meant that we were eating fat-free this and low
Right.
sugar,
Exactly.
whatever. Like, okay, that wasn't
Right.
healthy at
Mm-hmm.
all
Right.
for multiple reasons.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'm just so happy, like you, to be in this body in my
Mm-hmm.
50s. It's come with a lot of experience and learning along the way, a lot of tumbles along the way
Mm-hmm.
too.
Right.
But I'm grateful for what this body has provided, and I'm so grateful that we have access to these peptides and all these things that mean we can live longer, better.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
lucky
Yeah.
for all of
Right.
us.
And so,
Yeah.
Kylie, I know you didn't get to talk much about the menopause, but look what you have to look forward to. You're going to be able to sail right through it.
No, I'm gonna sail right through it. Exactly. I'm gonna do what I need to. I'm turning 37. I got some time.
You got some time,
I
exactly. You
would
got to
just
have
say
those
to anybody
foundations
who is
strong.
37 in their 30s or 20s even previous to you hitting the age that I am, love your liver.
Yep.
Your number one thing that you could be doing now is to make sure that your detox pathways are open and your liver is supported. I have come through this stage of life. I had a hysterectomy 6 years ago, so I don't even really know exactly where I am technically. Um, Not one single hot flash, not one anything. I have not suffered from any menopausal symptoms with regard to those uncomfortable things, disrupted sleep and hot flashes and all that kind of stuff because I've been so proactive for so long when it comes to protecting that. So, Kylie, I would say make sure that that is the one thing that you are doing for yourself at this point in the game.
Yes.
I feel like I'm not hard on my liver. I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life, never intend to, and I feel like that's a big strain.
Hmm.
And we don't filter our water. That's probably the next step, is
Yeah.
to filter the water, get the heavy metals out of there. But I feel like I'm pretty good.
A
My
carb-heavy diet will do it. Somebody that has
Yes.
maybe
Yeah, I
a
don't.
carb-heavy diet and is
We
a little
are
bit more stagnant.
carnivores over here. We
Yeah.
love our meat.
But other people that are listening,
Right.
if they're
Yeah.
listening, if you could honestly look back at your lifestyle and know, yep, I might be a little carb heavy in my diet and maybe I don't burn that off. I'm not actually using those carbs, then I would say that would be a priority for you.
Yeah.
And we can
Yeah.
help you. If you're not good at that, we do have something we can help you with a little glutathione boost and help you get there a little
We
bit. And the
can.
MOTS-C, like Stella just said, can
Um,
help there too. So
get
there
that
can be some
master
things, but
detoxifier in there and
yep,
mm,
absolutely.
open the
I feel
body
like
up.
I've been quite blessed, honestly, because I don't think about even getting on the scale. The last time I got on the scale was when I was pregnant. I'll tell you, the last 20 years, the only time I get on a scale is when I'm
Mhm.
pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't think about those things.
Hmm.
But I also haven't had, terrible health problems. My
Right.
health problems are my lungs. I had pneumonia early on. I think I was 12. And so for me, it's like when I get a cold, I immediately go to my high dose vitamin D. I take my WO put it on my neck, and it's like I avoid pneumonia. I haven't stepped into a doctor's office in 10 years. Like I feel like I'm done pretty good. Knock on wood. Stays
Excellent.
that way.
That is excellent. That is
But we
excellent.
do eat
Taking
like
care of yourself.
I grew up. My family has a dairy farm, and we grew up. We got a beef every Christmas. So
Hmm.
when I hear people and I see people and they're eating these carb heavy diets, that was just never part of my life.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It was always a really heavy, heavy protein diet.
Right.
And then I do remember the fat-free stuff. I
Hmm.
remember that in high school. It's like, oh, if it's fat-free, it's healthy. And then it's got all this
Right.
gluten. And now it's gluten-free everything. If it's gluten-free, it's healthy. So it's trends, it's fads. But before we finish, ladies, with our top three in menopause, we have GLP-1 GIP combination, MOTS C, and Sermorelin, which we haven't discussed much on this podcast. But let's talk about the additives we can add to our trizepatide order.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Stella, will you walk us through those? Because when someone goes to order their trizepatide, their GLP-1 GIP
Mhm.
combination, they're given three different options.
They are given three great options to customize it for themselves. And what I tell people all the time is read the second and third option because the way they're stacked on the screen when they're doing their ordering process is B12 is up front with a little sticker that says most popular. And then there's L-carnitine below that, and then glycine below that. So you can choose any three of these. There's no extra charge. This is just what you get to choose to add to make this your personal formula. And I always say read because they each one tells what it's about. So you get energy support with the B12, and a lot of people see that and they're like metabolic balance and some nerve health. Okay, yeah. And like we've mentioned, it's comfortable. They know it. It sounds familiar. Everyone's had a B12 shot, or they know someone that has. So, okay, yeah, I'll get the B12. But the next two, the L-carnitine or the glycine. And I'm like, on our site, you can dig into it more. You can do the drop down and you can read more about each one. But there's three things that are listed on each one. And, one of them has muscle preservation and sleep quality. So if those just light you up, if you're like, oh, I need some sleep, and it also has cognitive function, then you're looking at glycine. Glycine is what you really want to get. if you look at the L-carnitine that says exercise recovery, fat metabolism, energy production again, and you're in a process of working out and trying to build and struggling to get that exercise recovery, and you're already doing all the amino acids anyway and doing big dumps of those every day, the L-carnitine might be what's for you. So there's no right or wrong with any of these additives, but it is just read through and see which one that you're like, oh. And when I've had women that actually read through, they're like, oh, but now I want both of them. Can I have two? And I'm like, no, we do have to pick one for
Have to
stability
pick one of
issues.
them.
Exactly. We do have to pick one. And, you can always, if you want to change your additive on a next order, you can always just message into customer service and to support, and we're able to get that changed, so there is a way to get that changed on future orders. But just read through there. They give you some great drop down and a lot of great advice on what you're going to do. But I'm always just like, read past just that first one. Just because it's most popular doesn't mean, it's what
It's
you
for
need
you.
to choose. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Which
And
one's
you can
the one
also,
with the muscle recovery?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Which one's the one with the muscle recovery?
The
Carnitine?
muscle recovery was the glycine. No,
Glycine?
L-carnitine. L-carnitine is with the exercise recovery, and then glycine with the muscle preservation.
I was helping a family member order this, and we were debating on the three things. And his biggest complaint is recovery after his runs.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, then we need the carnitine. So we
Right,
added
yeah.
that one.
Exactly. Yeah.
So whatever your
Yeah.
biggest complaint is, make that additive be the solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look at
there you
what
go.
the biggest complaint is. And that's how.
All right,
how
Stella, what's one last word of somebody who's been on the fence? What do they need to do?
Just get on the site and get an order. It comes down to the fact that there's no sense in giving up. And by not doing anything, it's liable to be an entire year has gone by and you have yet to do anything. If you want to talk with us, you can definitely reach out to my team. I can give you our email address and they can, email us easily. But, just getting on board and going, okay, enough people have done this now and they're doing it safely and they're doing it right. I've got good foundations. Let me just pick my top thing that I really need help with and get in there and get the order placed and get it started.
Where can they find you?
The easiest way to find me is at drstellarx.com/peptides is the best one. Or you can just drop us an email at hello@drstellarx.com.
Jess, where can they find you?
Well, I am always on Instagram providing all kinds of either fun things like my dog rolled and pooped, or we're talking about peptides and wellness. You never know what you're going to get when you come on and find me, but I'm a lot of fun and a wealth of information. So jessb.talkshealth, that's where you can find me on my Instagram. You can also find me at my website, which is b2bwithjess.com. And I just want to say one more thing, Stella. I'm so appreciative of your time, of you hopping on here. And just want to reiterate, not only are you a pharmacist, but you are somebody that runs a practice that is based on a natural approach. So if you have listened to this whole thing and you think that this is a pharmacist that is talking about a prescription to push your way, that is not what this is about. Like so many of us in the functional/holistic space, we have realized that these are bioidentical, for the most part, not all of them.
Biosimilar, yeah.
Yep. Peptides that are really going to potentially be something that you're missing for whatever reason. And to hear you talk so passionately and have the same trajectory as me is, no thanks in the beginning, and keep our mind open to really learn about them. Talking about somebody that has that approach to wellness, that speaks volumes as to how powerful these peptides are.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if
And
anyone
as
is
a
interested in
pharmacist, you have prescription rights. And no, you don't.
No, I don't
right?
have prescription rights. No.
Oh,
Pharmacists in
okay.
some states and collaborative practice do. I do not have a collaborative
I feel like
practice.
we do here in Utah, because my cousin's a pharmacist.
You do
and
actually, in psychiatric medicine, they have a lot of prescriptive rights. So,
okay.
yeah.
So I was gonna say, even if you have prescription rights, you can still outsource these. And that's a
Right.
beautiful thing for us health providers. When we're busy staying in our zones of genius, we can let somebody else do the fulfillment side and utilize their prescription license for it. You can get started with me at drkylieburton.com. This is Pep Talk, Peptides Unpacked. If you haven't shared this with a friend yet, please do. Share this podcast episode, share the podcast. We'd love to spread the word on how to do these right, how to do these safe. And see you next time.